All right. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome everyone to the spiritual view where all views matter on the spiritual view. So corny when I say that. I love it. Good morning. Welcome. It is March 20th, I believe, today. And we are here live in the spiritual view with my beautiful co-hosts, Kim Wilkinson and Sheila Shorten. Kim is coming to you live from Thailand today in Chiang Mai. And Sheila is coming to you live from YEG, Edmonton, Canada. And I also sadly am back in YEG, Canada. And it is also the equinox today. So for those of you in the Northern Hemisphere, happy spring equinox. And for those of you on the opposite side of the world, you are in your fall / I guess winter time and equinox. And we are kicking off spring here where we live. And we thought it would be an amazing topic today to talk about how environments affect us and the power that they have when we start to change our environments or we get out of our comfort zone, which some of you, if you watched the previous couple episodes, may remember because I was in Cabo. For me, it was a very different experience that I'll speak to about in a little bit. But before we get to that, let's just check in and see how everybody's doing this morning. So Sheila, how are you doing this morning?
I feel great this morning. I went to Riverside Acres and did a drumming ceremony yesterday. So got myself out of my comfort zone, beat the drum, and just found myself really engaged in doing that. So that was fun. And as you know, when you're doing anything like that, the energy moves and it helps you feel this certain sense of, being present and all that. So I feel good today for sure.
Beautiful. Awesome. And what about you, Kim?
Well, I'm in Thailand, so I'm doing pretty great.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite places. So we've been here just a little over a week and still 3 weeks to go. So yeah.
Mhm.
It's
And you are
great.
in work mode, I guess, because you are running a retreat while you're there, right? It's not just personal
I
vacay.
am. Yes.
Okay. Awesome. And you're in evening right now? Are you opposite us?
Yeah, it's 10:30 p.m. here on Monday night.
Okay. Okay. So 11 hours. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, 13
Something
hours.
like that.
Me and math never got along.
Yeah, I'm having a tough time trying to keep track of the day right now.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Awesome. And yeah, I am actually, this is my first full week back at work. And so I feel like I'm in adjustment period personally, not just because of like we did have time change here, right? Which is, it's only an hour, but sometimes it can affect us. But more so because right before I left, like the day before I left, I moved into my studio. And so this is the first week that I'm working that I don't have my studio. It's like, it's just bizarre, like not in a bad way, but there's like a weirdness to it right now because I haven't settled in. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment. But speaking of environments, right, and changing our environments, we've all had a lot of really cool experiences lately. Like I know, Sheila, you've gone to Vancouver and you travel for work, so your environment kind of changes, monthly, right? And Kim, you're in Thailand and I was just on vacation. And so I feel like we've got lots to share on that. So maybe, Kim, we can start with you and what it's like for you being in Thailand and time change and all those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's kind of a few different sides to this. So first of all, I mean, I love Edmonton, but I'm not a fan of winter. So to be here in Thailand is fantastic for me. It's an environment that I will honestly say I find it so easy to be present here. And part of that is because, I mean, when we have such a big time change or a difference in time, it's much easier to sort of disconnect from home, I guess, right? When I'm going to bed here, my husband's getting up for work for the day, so we have a quick chat and we go on with our days or our night or wherever it is. And like back home, everything's sleeping and shut down while we're living and moving through our day here. And when I travel, I definitely do not watch TV. I don't watch a lot of TV at home anyway, but I don't even have a TV in my room. Don't miss it. Of course, still connected with technology, but it's just so easy to be in the moment here, which I love. And we do a lot of, I'll say it's somewhat of a spiritual experience. It's not a typical yoga retreat where we're doing a lot of yoga and meditation daily. We do, but this is really about culture and adventure and just experiencing life in a whole different way. And it is so very different here. And it makes me realize, and the people that come with me, just how different it really is. I think sometimes we can get caught up in needs and desires and, having to have and achieve these certain things for success or happiness and joy. And you come to a place like this and you see the simplicity, and it's kind of mind-blowing when you see it for the first time. And so it's nice to just settle into just simplicity. Now, having said that too, we are creatures of habit. And, I do have this wonderful space back home, my Zen den, as I call it, where I have my sacred space. And of course, we don't have that when we're traveling. I do have the opportunity here to visit some pretty magical temples, and we went to some today. But I also find it can be difficult in that to really find the stillness and connection in there, as I like to find, because you also have so many other tourists and people are excited and they're taking pictures. And I'll even just share an experience I had today. I went into one of the temples and I just sat down, and I actually had to even take some time away from my group. And I suggested to everybody, like, spread out, find some quiet time and just really feel the energy of this magical place. And I sat down in this temple and I went into a bit of a meditation. It was very quick, but I went deep fast. And there's a big gong and a big bell at the entrance of this. And somebody had come in right when I got deep and just whacked this bell. And it was so loud. And I just jumped. It startled me. It actually scared the crap out of me. So it can be difficult to find those experiences that we like to have, when we don't have our sacred space. So pros and cons for me so far here.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And I think, and I don't want to speak for anybody, Sheila, you can drop in here too. But I feel like, home away from home always has those beautiful elements of change that we often kind of crave or long for in our, our home base, we could say, right, where we live. But if you're there long enough, right? And so if you're only there for a couple of days, let's say you go to the mountain, you maybe don't have enough time for this, but you get to that point where you start to miss some of the comforts of home, I think. Do you have that experience as well, Sheila?
Yeah. And I'm just reminded of that saying. I have a cup that says it's something like, can you find the peace in the chaos? Something like that. Right. So that was that when you were telling that story, Kim, I was thinking of that because it's easy to find peace in the Zen den. Can you find it in in Thailand where someone's going to bang your gong? Right.
Yeah, totally.
Literally.
Yeah. And Sheila, your experience is a little bit different from the perspective of that you actually travel for work. And so the last place I think you were was in Vancouver, right?
Yeah. And so I had an experience that was, Vancouver is fantastic for me. I love being near the ocean and I got to experience that. I was checking into my hotel and the hotel had some kind of glitch where they didn't have my reservation. And I did have my reservation on my phone showing that it was confirmed, but they were insistent that I didn't have a reservation. So as I was checking into this hotel, the lineup behind me was growing. And the lineup was growing with people I know from the industry that I work in, because we were all going to this convention. And my anxiety was rising because I'm feeling like I'm taking up space that I don't deserve to take up. And I'm noticing myself in this experience and thinking, why do I feel like I don't deserve to be here? Why do I feel like I don't deserve this space? Because their lineup and they're getting agitated and they're like, hey, Sheila, what's going on? Jokingly, of course, but, and you're feeling this less than that was coming over me. And I was quickly aware that I have less than still in my aura, in my presence. So for me, travel is always an opportunity to notice what is out of alignment, what is not serving me. And I think if I just stayed in my day-to-day doing everything as is and everything was working out, it would be hard for me to find that. It'd be hard for me to notice that. But because we do this kind of work, and because we're always in this world of wanting to grow and expand, I take these experiences seriously. And I take it as not only for me, it's important to let go of the lesson, but it's important for me as a teacher and someone that holds the wisdom of our greatness. Our world is dependent on our greatness. So going somewhere else that's not comfortable. Well, Vancouver's not uncomfortable, but you're definitely not doing the same things you're doing every day. It is an opportunity for me to grow and to learn and notice where I am still sitting in that state of less than.
Interesting. And thank you for sharing that, because I feel like, as we know, there's messages in everything, in all of our experiences, and in everywhere that we travel and every place that we visit, but we have to be willing to be open to see them. Right. And so
Right.
that's a beautiful example of that. I love that. And like, even when I was just away in Cabo, it's interesting, like, since we had the pandemic, we hadn't gone away anywhere the entire time that we were locked down. And so if I rewind back to January, my husband and I actually went away for a week by ourselves to Puerto Vallarta. And that was a work trip that he had earned like years ago that we could never actually fulfill because, travel was shut down, all of the things. And we'd been to Puerto Vallarta before. We actually got married in Puerto Vallarta before, obviously, we got married in Puerto Vallarta. But we went there, and the weather was great. It was, a beautiful resort. It was amazing, but I didn't realize it at the time, but there was no like life force or aliveness to it for me, if that makes sense. And I don't mean to sound ungrateful. Like, I'm super grateful that we got to sneak away with the kids and that we had the opportunity to go and all of those things. But what I didn't realize until I got to Cabo was how flat it was for me. Because when I got to Cabo, it was like a full set. I've never been there before. It was like a full sensory experience. Like, all of my senses were on high alert and everything just turned on. And it was the most magical place. And like, I would go back there in an instant. And again, there's those pros and cons like we talk about, right? Like, I would love to be able to have my morning coffee and have the view that we had, looking at the ocean every morning and seeing the whales jump and the sea lions and the turquoise water crashing onto the rocks and the beach and the white sand and all of these things. And at the same time, when we go away on vacation and we think, oh, I'd really love to live here, it's different vacationing somewhere than it is like living there and functioning there, in my opinion, right? Because all of a sudden, if I have to work and kids go to school, and it changes the dynamics a little bit, right? But what was super interesting is that we booked this place kind of just random and quick and didn't really know what we had booked. And it ended up being like, it would have been the perfect couple getaway. Like, we had our kids and my parents there, but like the ambiance, like, it was very romantic and it was just so magical. And it was almost like the universe was giving me this experience of contrast to show me like this first experience was life as I knew it up until that moment. But then when I went to Cabo, it was this experience of, this is what else is possible. And even though I was missing things like my bed and my pillow, those things that we kind of, feel very comfortable in, it was an experience like I'd never had before. Even though, like, I have been to Thailand, I have been to Greece, and I've been to some other places, and Greece is a whole other different story. But it was a very powerful experience. It was like the universe was just like knocking on the door and being like, hey, this is where you need to go. This is where you need to focus your energy. This is where you need to create, right? It was like the next level, or the next step, if you will, if that makes sense. Yeah.
So my question, Tracy, is, are you moving to Cabo?
I would love to move to Cabo, but that being said too, and so we didn't go off the beaten path a ton. We did go into Cabo twice, and we went out a couple times to eat and things like that. And we did we stayed around the marina, which is a pretty touristy area, but super expensive. Like, even the resort that we were at, they also had like villas and timeshare. So the whole thing wasn't all inclusive. But you got a bill at the end of every meal. And if you were all inclusive, you just signed the bill and then it was good. But it was just like, they wanted the paper trail. Our meals would be like $1,000 US. And I was like, what? And it wasn't an alcohol bill, let me say, like we each maybe had 2 drinks or whatever, right? But we also had kids, but super, super expensive, but also so beautiful, so magical, and so luxurious. If I could afford it, maybe I would. We'll see. Or maybe I'll find another place that's just as magical. I don't know. Yeah. So that being said, like it's always great to travel and to have those experiences and to get outside of our comfort zones. But what does this look like when we're home, when we're not traveling? How does our environment affect us from that perspective? Kim, what are your thoughts?
Well, for me, and first of all, I hope you guys are hearing me okay. I'm a little bit sketchy on this end. Wi-Fi is a little bit frozen, but as long as you can hear me, that's okay. Yep. For me at home, I shouldn't say I don't ever feel thrown off. I guess when I feel thrown, because I work from home a lot. I mean, I do teach yoga, but I do a lot of my work from home, whether it's and a lot online. We do, our show when I'm at home usually. Mm-hmm. The only thing that sort of throws me off is when my husband comes home during the day. Because some things, you're recording or you're mm-hmm. recording videos for a program. I do everything I can to keep things quiet, like the dog in the basement, so he's not barking at Amazon when they drop off a parcel. And I mean, I love seeing my husband, and it's nice when he comes home to have lunch, but sometimes I'm in the middle of recording something and then I either have to stop and redo it after, or I've learned to adjust. I send a message, hey, I'm going to be online doing a live from this time to this time, just a heads up sort of thing. So if you can kind of sneak in, right? But sometimes we have those disruptions, but other than that, I feel very fortunate that way. In that, I mean, I do set my own schedule. I have a lot of flexibility. So I don't often feel those challenges at home. Mm-hmm. Mostly when I'm away. Yeah. And I think for me, the biggest thing that I need to have when I'm away is some alone time. That's the one thing that I need. If I can bring some incense or a book or something that kind of keeps me in the mindset I want to be in, or in some sort of practice, whether it's journaling. But one thing that I find I definitely need is a little bit of time just for myself each day, mm-hmm. without any distractions. So whether that's sneaking away on a walk off by myself, or booking a room for just myself, or even when I'm with my husband. I mean, we travel well together, but sometimes I will just get up in the morning and go for a walk to the beach, because I might try to sneak out quietly onto the balcony for yoga, and then he'll get up and come and have coffee out there, but it's not the same, right? So that's mm-hmm. the one thing I need. The rest I can adjust with. But for me, that's my staple, if you want to call it. That's my big necessity.
Yeah. Oh, I totally hear you on that. Because on my vacation with 6 people for 2 weeks, I was like daily walks on the ocean. And at the end of the 2 weeks, don't get me wrong, I love my family, but I was like, okay, you need to go to work. You need to go to school. It's like, I'm done. I need to be still. Totally. Yeah. What about you, Sheila?
I think that it's interesting that the 3 of us do work that is sort of out of the norm, so that we're not doing the same thing every day. Mm-hmm. And I don't suggest that people do the same thing every day at their work, but for us, it's like when people come see us, I think it is for them to get themselves out of their comfort zone so that they can see what is actually happening in their lives. So mm-hmm. if I'm doing a session on someone, I'll bring something up. It's not that they're not aware of it. I'm not giving them some big aha moment. Well, it is an aha moment in some ways, but then they get to look at it. Just like I got to look at this piece of me that was still buying into the idea that I was less than. So we offer that to our clients in a big way. And when people say, why do you do what you do? Or what is it you do? Like, people are wondering, what is the heck is it you do? I think what I would say is we take people out of their comfort zone. And I think us talking about what we do to take ourselves out of comfort zone is travel, and it's experiencing different things. Not always not always comfortable to feel less than. Not my favorite place to go, but we do these things because it matters to us. And it matters to us that we offer something to people where they do get a chance to see their less than, or they get a chance to see where something is just not working in their life. And they can, once you know it, you can acknowledge it and you can change it. You get another step. It's just another step in my evolution to recognize, okay, there you are again, being less than. Let's look at that. Let's go there. Let's face it, and otherwise I wouldn't have been facing it. I would just be sitting there waiting to rear its head. So I think, we all of us understand Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, and his wisdom is to always do something different. If you're going to the same grocery store every day, is anything going to change? Are you going to meet anyone different? You're going to create the same experience over and over again. So taking yourself out of the comfort zone doesn't mean you have to go to Thailand or to Vancouver or to Cabo. It might just mean that you just maybe go to a different grocery store that day, or you go talk to a different friend. That you talk to the same person all the time, but now you're talking to someone different and they bring something to your awareness. There's all kinds of ways you can change your environment in your world that doesn't necessarily mean travel. But for us, I think travel is a big experience where we get to really face things that are uncomfortable. I mean, Kim's going on a raft tomorrow, or sorry, on a hike tomorrow in 37-degree weather. Yeah. So
3 days in the jungle.
And I guarantee that Kim will do it with grace. I guarantee. But I might not do that with grace. I might be like, oh my gosh, like I wouldn't probably act outwardly, but inwardly I'd be suffering a little bit. So so there's things that we do as teachers and work in this world that really allows us to find our peace, to find that even when the gong's going off. I'm sure, Kim, you found yourself back in your meditation or back to where you needed to be, because that's who you are and that's what you challenge yourself to be. So
you kind of make me think of something that we've talked about before, and it's that concept of things are happening for me, not to me. And also that reminder of to always be in gratitude, right? Even when we're in struggle or challenge or discomfort, the best way to move through it is from that place of gratitude and acceptance, and, rather than resisting and staying stuck.
I love that. And, as we're having this conversation, it makes me think of the word thriving and being able to have the discernment as to where you are going to thrive and being very intentional about it, because thriving doesn't necessarily mean comfortable, right? Thriving just means coming out of surviving. So for example, when I went to Greece back in 2018, I had some of the hugest like spiritual experiences and initiations that I've ever had in my life. And physically, they were super uncomfortable, right? Physically, it's not something that I would ever want to, wish on any of my clients or anything like that. But it was something that was necessary. And I was lucky enough that in that space, and when I was visiting those sacred sites, like the temple of Athena and Nike and Thor's birthplace and all of, or sorry, Zeus' birthplace and all of these things, that I was in a container that felt safe. That was the key for me, is that I was with other people and I was with someone that was co-facilitating the retreat with me that I knew had my back and was safe. And then when I translate that to being home now, for example, so the home I'm in right now, we moved into 18 months ago. And the previous home, it was interesting. There was nothing wrong with our house, but we had outgrown it. The kids were getting big. We had all of this stuff. We hadn't done any decluttering. And no matter, like, as you can see, like, there's not a ton of shit anywhere. Like, I'm a pretty organized person. But at the same time, it was like we had created this environment that was just, it was cluttered. And so because it was cluttered, it was constantly in a state of contraction. There was no way I would have ever agreed long-term to work out of the office in that home. But then moving to this home, even like looking back, I realized it wasn't just the home that called us here, it was actually the location of it and the land, because we back onto a green belt and things like that. And this home feels like sanctuary to me. And you'll see if you were to come in here, there's little altars set up in many places. And so it's very much more, we could say maybe temple-like or devotional than my other home. And so the spaces and places really can affect us in a powerful way. Like clients can come and see me in person. And when they do that, that might be their safe, sacred space because their home isn't conducive to that work, or there's always somebody home, or they, don't feel safe because someone can walk in the room, or they can be disrupted, or whatever that is, right? And then I also have virtual clients, and the beauty about virtual is that you get to be in your own home. And if you have that set up where your home is your sanctuary, that might be a safer place for you than coming into a studio where there's other people around and you can hear noises and things are unfamiliar. So to me, I think part of the message is to have a self-awareness and a discernment of what you need in order to be able to thrive. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. It also, it reminds me of something I actually forgot about this that happened since being here. And I think it's about when we are in these new environments to really be open to see what is it that's there for me, right? And this is my 7th time to Thailand and probably 5th to Chiang Mai. And it's interesting because, I mean, prior to coming here, there was a lot coming up about crystals. Anybody who has followed me just in my own business knows about the Crystal Project and whatnot. And I've gone to temples here that I've gone to every single time I've come here. And one of the things I noticed this time that I never ever noticed before is how many crystals are in these temples that I never saw before. And like so many of them. And then even today, we were at this beautiful temple. And I walked in, and I kid you not, they always have, several Buddhas and flowers and candles. And here on this one side was it was like this big, this crystal globe. And the detail inside of it, I don't even know what the word is, but the markings inside, like I've never seen anything so magical. I put a video of it on my TikTok. But I've never seen anything so magical. And as I looked at, everything within this crystal, all the records, it was just incredible. And like I said, I've been to these places many, many times, but never did I see those before. And I know they weren't just put there, they've been there, but I never saw them until this time. Mm. So it's been really interesting.
Yeah, I love that. And it, again, back to that piece of awareness, right? That if we're not open, it's like we almost miss things. Like I can remember, going to visit someone for the first time in their home or whatever. And because it was just a new surrounding, really not noticing a ton, and going back the next time and the next time, it's like, oh, is that a new picture? And the person's like, no, that's been there for 20 years or, whatever, because, I showed it maybe in my head or I was, going through something or whatever it was. Right. But that awareness piece, that aspect of mindfulness, I guess, if you will, right, can make all the difference.
Yeah. Can make the whole scenery completely different. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what would be, if I were to ask each of you, what would be one of the biggest maybe challenges or something that you have to kind of work through or be very aware of anytime you change your environment from your home, let's say?
I can go first.
Yeah.
For me, again, it's, and I think I mentioned it early, it's the need to make sure I create some time and space for solitude. Where I can just be still. And whether that's just in whatever hotel room I'm in, or whether it's out in a park or somewhere, but that time where I can just really connect deeper to myself, to spirit, there was the first week here, we were so busy, it was hard to find any of that. And I could hear like the ringing and the ringing in my ear of, something trying to get my attention. I knew I had to pull myself away and be able to be open to that, because in an environment that is so busy with so many distractions, I find it very difficult to be able to do that. So for me, it is that stepping back and creating, that time for just myself.
Yeah. Awesome. Beautiful. Thanks, Kim. Sheila, what about you?
When I travel, the most important thing for me is to find fitness or yoga. I travel the world and I'll find a yoga studio in the middle of, Nice, France, where there's no yoga studios. I managed to find one. Those things are really super important to me. Like, if I don't do my practice, my yoga, I can do it in my room easy enough. But the last couple trips, I forgot my yoga mat, which sort of challenged me a little bit more. But yeah, I have to find a fitness or a yoga place where I can go find a community and hang out there. And I love to find different communities. Like, I love new yoga studios so that I can learn from new teachers and I can find new experiences. But I will never go on a holiday and not find that. That's super important to me.
Interesting. Thank you. And I'm a little bit more tangible, I'm realizing, as I'm asking this question, from the perspective of there must be something, I don't know what it is, but it's like I'm positional or maybe relational in a way. Like, so for example, I massaged just on Saturday in the new space that I moved into, and I felt completely disheveled and disorientated because the head is on the opposite side of the table as it was in my room, and the table's facing a different way. So like totally threw me off, even though I still have the same right side, the same left side, like it totally threw me off. And when we go away, my husband will always walk in and he'll be like, okay, well, which side of the bed do you want? Because I don't know, I can't even figure out how I decided. But like in our bedroom, like I think it's maybe he's always on my left, but like in my bedroom, I'm closest to the door. But like, for example, when we were in Cabo, I wanted to be as farthest away for the door. And I can't really explain it. It's just like a knowing. I'm like, no, I can't sleep there. I have to be over here. So there's some things that I have to like, I guess, control a little bit. And I also like to have certain like comforts, I guess you could say, with me, if possible. So like when we went to Cabo, it wasn't possible, but my pillow would be number one. Like if I could just have my pillow and my soft little pink blankie, that makes me feel, I don't know, clearly I sound like a child right now, but it makes me feel so much better to have like some of these small comforts of home. And then when I get to that place, they have to go in certain places, if that makes sense. Which, like I remember, actually, this reminds me when my husband and I first started dating, I would come and visit him at his condo, and he's very specific on where things are. Like everything has its place, and that might be a bit of a military background or whatever. But so as a joke, I used to like move his shit all the time, but only by like a quarter of like a millimeter. So like I'd wait till he'd leave the room and I'd take like, a book or something that was sitting on the coffee table, and I would just like push the corner out. And I would do this like all over the place. And then it was hilarious because then I would watch him. He'd never say anything, but I would watch him walk around and reposition everything that I had moved. It's the funniest thing ever. But I don't know. Do you guys have any quirks like that?
As you're talking and as I'm listening to what we're saying and responding, I'm realizing that all of it is about control.
Oh yeah.
I need to control my physical. I got to go find that gym. I got to go find, that's control. Tracy needs to control her pillow and her blanket and, the environment. It's control.
Yeah.
Kim needs silence. That's control. And it's interesting. I'm really loving that right now. I'm having an aha moment about us and about human nature, is that we like to control our environment, and every single thing we teach is to let go of control. Mm-hmm. Every single thing that we teach to our clients is let go of control, because the control is suffering. Isn't it fascinating how we're just sitting having a conversation about it? It's like we're having our own moment right now.
Totally. But what I would argue is that the control creates safety.
But it's an illusion.
That's what came to mind.
Yeah.
And it's funny, we were talking with a monk last week for about 2 hours, and he was again reminding us of the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, and suffering. And it's funny because I agree with you 100%, Sheila. And at the same time, I'm going, okay, but why is it we only want to control certain things and not others? Like I just started thinking, like at home, the first thing I do when I get up is have coffee. I go down and like, I want it now. I'm not even waiting for the pot. I make a Keurig and I go and I have my coffee. And here, and I don't like strong coffee. And the coffee here is strong. So I'm not even really having coffee here, and I'm not even really missing it. But I know as soon as I go home, I will go back to my coffee in the morning. So, it's interesting how I have the need to control my quiet time and space, but I don't have the need to control my coffee intake, right? And I do love coffee.
Yeah.
It's just
fascinating.
interesting.
It is, like, even the pillow and the blanket thing, like, I mean, I went to Cabo, I totally survived without it, but I did have a few moments when I was there being like, oh, I missed my pillow, but I had a sore neck because I was sleeping on a different pillow, right? And I had a few moments of being like, oh, I'm a little cold. I'd really like to curl up in my fuzzy go-to blanket, but I didn't have, it's not like I didn't survive without it or that I was like freaking out. It was just one of those things where it was like, oh, I'd really love to have this comfort, I guess, of home, right? It would make me feel better, I guess, to have this comfort of home.
And I'm sure you'll both agree with me that going away is so wonderful, but it's always nice to come home, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you maybe even have a deeper appreciation for some of those things, right? Like your bed and the people you've been away from and your space.
Absolutely. Now, if you could take my pillow, my bed, and my blankie and move it to Cabo, then I might be totally fine to never come home. And some coffee. It'd be an interesting experiment to actually go somewhere for like more than a vacation time, so like more than 2 weeks, let's say, and see what you could, like, what you would insist on taking in order to feel comfortable there, and what you would be willing to leave behind, like as a total hypothetical.
I think for me, I feel like I adapt so well, and it probably comes from my upbringing, right? It being a child of a police officer and moving around so much. I just got used to change. So I do feel I've always been very adaptable. So I'm also someone who I like to have a bath every night before bed. Every time I come here, there's no baths. We do have a bit of a shower in the jungle, but I feel like I adapt fairly well. But there are those couple of things that I still like to control.
Yeah. But do you think the adaptation also comes from because you travel quite a bit, Kim, like you've been running retreats for years, right? So, and Sheila, like you travel every month, correct? For work. So do you feel like that adaptability also comes because you just do it more?
Absolutely. And I mean, because especially with this Thailand retreat, I mean, it's kind of the same itinerary each year. So I know a lot of the local people here. And so I have friends. And when you come back, people recognize you and you remember you and you have these relationships. So it's even more special that way. It's a little bit more intimate. Mm-hmm. And yeah.
And Sheila, do you find the same?
Yeah, I think for me, traveling is always exciting, and it allows me an opportunity to feel free. I feel sort of a sense of freedom. But as I'm saying that, I'm just thinking, why don't I just feel free all the time? Why don't I just feel free when I'm at home? And why would I compartmentalize that? Oh, I get to travel, so now I'm free. That's something that's just coming up for me now in this moment. My girlfriend is a friend of mine is going through an experience where she's doesn't have a home to live in right now. She's going through a different situation, and she's telling me how free she feels all the time. She doesn't know where the next place she's going to land, and she uses her guidance, and something always comes up, and she's always guided somewhere. And she's taken to the most crazy situations, and things are happening, like mind-blowing things that most people wouldn't even believe that are happening for her. She's just experiencing life from this place of complete lack of control of what's next. And I wonder, like, I personally, I'm not really there. Like, I like to have my home. I like to know that I have a bed that night. I'm not just living out of my car. I like a certain amount of control. I still like to control things. So I'm just kind of curious about this whole control thing. Is it, Kim is giving up quite a bit of control in going to the jungle, because you don't know what's going to happen in that jungle. Like, you're going out and you're walking into the jungle. Lack of control. You have no control of what will happen next. Tracy and I, and all three of us giving these sessions to our clients, we have no sense of control because we have no idea what's going to come up in those sessions. We give up if we have any little bit of control, trying to control that session, it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
It would not work for the client. So yeah, this whole idea that, travel and getting ourselves out of our comfort zone and all that kind of stuff. I'm just thinking about it now as a real opportunity for us to examine where we try to control things in our lives. I wanted to control the check-in process. I didn't want to be the one holding up the line. I definitely felt out of control, holding up that line for sure.
And, it makes me think of this book, like Kim, I'm sure you've probably read it because it was in our meditation teacher training, and Sheila, you can let me know. I don't remember the author, but it's called The Surrender Experiment.
Yeah.
Have you read that?
Michael A. Singer.
Thank you. Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, because it's been years since I've read it, but the story goes that there is this man, and it's a true story, right? And it's a chronicle, and he basically kind of relinquishes everything and starts by living in some kind of camper or truck or whatever, and makes a commitment for a whole year to just follow every single yes, even when it doesn't make sense. And it's this spiritual journey, but like halfway through, he says yes to like working for, is it like a tech company or something?
I think so, yeah.
That goes against
quite an interesting story.
Yeah. And it goes against everything that he believes in, but it gets presented to him. And so because he made this commitment and this agreement to himself to say yes, he says yes to it. And at the time, I think he's living in some type of like commune type place.
Yeah.
And he says yes to it, and he ends up being this multimillionaire. It's the
purpose
most
in it.
Yeah, it's the most fascinating story. It's a super easy read, but it's the most fascinating story. And I think he's been like on Oprah, and he's actually quite well known, even though I couldn't remember his name.
Yeah, Michael A. Singer, The Untethered Soul. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, The Surrender Experiment. He did that one too, but the Surrender Experiment is the one you're talking about.
Yeah, or maybe they were different authors. I'm not sure. Anyways, I know it's called The Surrender Experiment.
He was the same author.
It was.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a really great read because you listen to him and he walks you through his whole process, even at the points where he's like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I don't know why I'm saying yes to this. I don't know why I'm going to this place. I don't know any of these things, but I trust. And it's this most amazing story of this man that just relinquished to his own inner guidance. It's powerful. Mm-hmm.
I feel like if there's any message to take away, maybe it's, and everything is a perception or a view. But my view on this is that the real or the only truth is that the only thing we ever really can control is how we respond to what's happening around us.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Which means sometimes it's going to be moments where we want that control, and other times it's going to be moments where we go,
let go.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we were to kind of circle back and bring this a little bit more, let's say home, because traveling is fabulous, but we don't all have perhaps the finances to do so, or the time off to do so, or all of those things. We are sitting today on the spring equinox, which is time of equal sun or equal light and equal dark, right? And starting off the season of spring, do you have any tips for our listeners as to how they could change or affect their environment in such a way that they could create their own sanctuary if they feel like they're not quite there yet?
I would love to add to something Sheila brought up earlier, because it resonates so much with me, going back to Dr. Joe Dispenza. When I first discovered him and his teachings, that's what I started to do. And I started with those small things, right? Parking in a different place at the grocery store parking lot instead of parking in the same stall all the time. Or when I go to the gym, going to a different area, a different locker instead of going to the same one all the time. Now, sometimes I can't remember where the hell my stuff is. But, you know, changing up routine, right? Maybe having your breakfast first and then showering, and tomorrow it's shower and then breakfast, just those little changes.
Beautiful. Sheila.
Allow yourself the freedom to discover. That's all I would say is, you know, if a drum circle comes up and it feels super uncomfortable, go to the drum circle. If someone says, you know, I'm going to lead someone in the jungle, and I'm like, I don't want to go in the jungle. Maybe I should go in the jungle, you know, let yourself be uncomfortable and see what happens. That would be my suggestion. Now, that being said, I still don't think I'll go to the jungle.
Oh, come on. It's fun.
Maybe in 2024.
I'm definitely afraid of snakes. And that is like I can't even just tell you how the fear I have of snakes. So good for you, Kim.
I will say I haven't seen a snake in there. Not to say there isn't, but I will share next week a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me share a quick snake story, because when I went to Thailand, and I wasn't you're in Chiang Mai right now, but I was south. I was in the islands of like Koh Phi Phi and Koh Phangan and all that kind of stuff. And the first place that we stayed at, because we traveled for like 6 weeks. We traveled for 6 weeks. We started in Bangkok and we went south. So the first place we stayed at they were huts on stilts, and they're on stilts because they got high tide and whatever, right? But they literally are made out of like bamboo and whatever. And I went on with this travel group, but I didn't know a single person. So I had a roommate that I didn't know and all these things. And so I go to breakfast, and it's like the third, maybe fourth morning in. So we were a couple days in Bangkok, and then we moved south. So we're maybe like 5 days in total, and we're all kind of adjusting. And keep in mind, this is like, how old am I? 45. So it's like 20 years ago, first of all. So we're all kind of adjusting, our systems are adjusting to the water and to the food, right? And so all of our stomachs, we've got a little bit of gastrointestinal stuff going on and whatever. So I'm sitting at breakfast, and I realize that I really need a washroom. And so I need to go back to my hut to get to the washroom. So I go like fast walking, you know, back to my hut, and like, to not to like TMI, but I barely get there. And so I run in there, and in our hut in Thailand, the bathroom, like everything was in one room. So it's like one huge shower with a sink and a toilet in it is how it's set up, and a door.
Still that way.
Okay. Yeah. So I go rushing in there, and I close the door, and I barely make it. And so I'm like, you know, because my stomach's upset, and I look in the corner, and there's the biggest, blackest snake coiled up in the corner, and his head's just like, and he's hissing at me. I'm fucking terrified of snakes. And I'm like, talk about scare the shit out of me. Like, that took on a whole new meaning in that moment. So I'm like sitting there, you know, and I can't, like, no control, right? I gotta do what I gotta do. And I'm like, you know, slowly, methodically moving to do what I need to do. And he's just sitting there, like, just fucking eyeing me up. And I don't know if he's poisonous. I don't know what's going to happen. And I'm not screaming because I don't want to scare him, but in my head, I'm like freaking out. I tell you, as soon as I could move, it was literally like a 2-jump, open the door, hop on the bed. And then I just fucking lost my mind and started screaming. It's like, I totally lost it. And I had to call the people that work there to come in, and they, like, you know, pick it up on this stick and like take it out. And I'm like, how did it get in here? And it's because there's holes in the bamboo between like how they create the hut, right? It can just like, so I literally spent the rest of the day with toilet paper, which is a commodity in Thailand. Like at that time, like they told you to bring your own toilet paper. And I used like a whole roll, and I stuffed it in like every hole that I could find in that hut to keep those snakes out. I gave up an entire roll of toilet paper because I was so fucking terrified.
Maybe it was your opportunity to get over your fear.
Maybe, but I mean, I was not even remotely on my spiritual journey at that point. I was just finishing university, and Thailand was like my gift to myself before I started working as a teacher. I was just in pure fear. There was no
now
way.
You got to come back. Now that you're much more enlightened, you'll have a whole new appreciation for it.
Maybe I'll even pet it. Who knows? Oh, too funny. Okay, so I just had to share that story. But back to the tips for our listeners about your environment, so I set up my home office yesterday, and what I'm realizing as I'm thinking about it is, for me, what really creates that space of sanctuary, and it doesn't necessarily have to be at home, but it's it's creating an environment of inspiration and something that feels devotional in a way. So, like, for example, in my home office, once I put it all together, I smudged the room and I've been playing frequency music in there for the last 24 hours. So for me, it's all about setting the space, if that makes sense. Not from the place that I have to control everything, but from the place that energetically it needs to feel a certain way to me. And I can tell energetically when it feels off. And that might mean I have to go and like move a crystal, or I don't know. But to me, it's about creating that devotional and that inspirational space that's going to hold the highest frequency possible for me. So if that means I need to declutter, then I declutter, right? If that means I need to move things around or add something, then I do that. If that means I need to, put some frequency music in there or smudge or whatever that looks like, for me, it's more of an energetic type of, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Any final words, ladies, as we wrap it up?
I just want to say thanks to everybody for listening and joining. I'm good to be back. I missed last week.
Yes, we missed you. We missed you.
Nice to have you, Kim. And I'm going to tell you, Tracy, I'm going to have the hardest time today with your story.
Yep.
Yeah, good for you for facing that. Like, that is crazy. That is facing your fear at its finest, right?
Well, it wasn't really by choice.
Yeah. I don't think it ever is by choice. It did, well, I guess it is by choice. We do put it out there that we want to grow and expand. But yeah, those situations come up and there's like, okay, there's no control in that situation.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that was a relinquishing moment of the surrender experiment, for sure. For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. And to all of you that are watching, whether you're watching us live or on the replay, thank you so much. We are so grateful that you are here and that you choose to spend your time with us, because we know that time is one of the only, limited resources perhaps that we have. And please subscribe and like our show, and we can continue this conversation over on our Facebook page. So please hop over there and share any comments, any insights, any ahas, ask any questions. And we hope to see you next week at 9:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time on The View. And we'll talk to you all very, very soon. Namaste.
Bye, everyone.